So here's the application of today in clinics or in, athletic training, wherever you guys, personal training. Manual muscle testing is going to be part of the job. And we can look at this two different ways. And for those of you that don't know, manual muscle testing is when you're testing a muscle's integrity through isometrics, right? Who's working? So in other words, they may say, it hurts when I hold my arm out, or it hurts when I do this certain exercise. So you have to take the clues, the things that we've been practicing in class, to say these external forces, so these muscles, and then in 415, we're going to say those muscles are. So that's kind of one path that you're going to have to figure out who's working during certain testing or certain exercises. You have to figure out who is activated, who's on, who's the agonist, all those words, they mean the same thing. And then the other way is, how does it work? And I'm not talking about contractions, like literally, if you have to work a specific muscle for a specific exercise, for a specific purpose, you'll say, okay, here is a muscle. We'll do 415 upper extremity. The pronator teres. You say, well, man, it's been a while since I've been in school. I don't remember what the pronator teres does. Hashtag pronation puller. And you say, okay, well, let me just go see what that muscle does. And what I'm trying to teach you is that what a muscle does isn't just one specific motion, right? You've heard this over and over again. What it does is how it pulls. And then you say, okay, the pronator teres is a pronator, meaning it pulls that way. So if I wanted to test it, what external force would I have to give it? I'd have to want to supinate the radioulnar joint to activate, of which is a pronation puller. See what I'm saying there? So in other words, if I wanted to test a specific muscle, all I have to know is how does it pull? And then I can reverse engineer the external forces I need to apply to make it work, to turn it on. If a muscle is a cervical flexion puller, I need to provide an external force that's trying to extend to make those flexion pullers turn. So two different ways to look at this is asking who's working, with some examples that Grace and I are about to do, where your job is to identify the agonistic group based off of the clues we give you. And then another way to look at it is, how does it, if I said, I'll give you an example of what I'm trying to get to, but if I said your right lateral cervical benders are working isometrically, that's enough information to know that there's something trying to bend you to the left. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, Grace, let's do some manual muscle examples. So these practice questions are, Grace is going to be our model today, and we're going to do some different manual muscle testing where you guys have to look at the clues of external forces and then identify what agonistic muscles have to be working. First part of class is going to be nothing but those. Then we'll do some stretching questions, and then at the end we'll practice some more complex plyometric stuff. Okay. All right, Grace, let's go arm out. That's okay. That's okay. I just want to make sure it's okay. Question number one, do not let me push you up. Do not let me push you up. Do not let me push you up. You guys need to identify. You need to identify the agonist in that manual muscle test. As I give her the instructions, don't let me push you up. Look at that table needs like a pressure wash.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I will do this.
Her legs are always first.
When wakes with snacks to fit. You could try to get some of that in your mouth. Set on the table. Keep your hand. That's what I'll do. On the test, I could ask, like, what motion is the external force trying to cause? And then what would be the agonistic muscle group? What motion would your muscles be trying to cause? That's really what it's about. The external force is trying to cause something, and your muscles are trying to cause something. And if there's no movement, those two influences have to cancel out. Make sense? All right. External force is trying to do what to Grace's shoulder? Flex. Good. She doesn't need flexion pullers. Turn on flexion pullers. She literally pull her hand away from the force. Go up. So if the external force is trying to flex her, she needs extensors, right shoulder extensors. And we're going to learn who those muscles are. But if all we did was say, okay, I want to do a manual muscle test. I'm going to reverse engineer it. I want to test the strength or the integrity of the teres major. You may be like, whoa, I hadn't had that muscle since undergrad. All you have to do is see how the teres major pulls. Oh, it's an extension puller. So therefore, if I wanted to test it, I need to supply a flexion force. Don't let me push you up. Bang. I'm recruiting extensors, of which the teres major is one of those muscles. See how it works? Okay. Let's go here. Okay. And don't let me push your hands in. Don't let me push your hands in. Don't let me push your hands in. Now, in exam 1, we saw this where people were confusing horizontal ab and abduction of the shoulder with internal and external rotation of the shoulder. This would be horizontal AB and A deduction. This would be just like this, internal and external rotation. The only difference is my elbow is flexed, right? So make sure, that's why it's still important to practice motion. Because if we're not getting motion right, how are we going to get the other question? Okay. So in this question, her elbows are flexed, but her shoulders are still in anatomical position. And I'm supplying a force trying to bring her hands in. Now, you guys need to know what motion I'm trying to create external. That's part of the test, is to see if you guys remember, hey, what motion is that if I'm trying to bring her hands in? And then which muscles would I need to recruit to keep her hands from going in? And then eventually we'll learn who are those muscles. That's the easy part. Learning who the muscles are is just geography. It's like learning your states and categories. Okay, go. I don't know if you think you're right. Sure. Start. Hey guys, what was the external force trying to do to her shoulders? Internally rotate. So she needs muscles that are trying to externally rotate. And again, you guys know all this stuff already. Like if we did an experiment where all of you lined up here and I said, don't let me push your hands in, your body knows exactly which muscles to recruit. They may not know what it's called, but your bodies know this stuff already. We're just trying to get your brain to communicate what your body already knows. All right, here could be a curveball question I just thought about. So let's put our hands like this. Perfect. Maybe a little bit more like this. So what if I was trying globally? What if I was trying to produce force in the same global direction? Remember, we don't assume. So I'm trying to push both of her hands to you guys, to the front. So her right hand, I'm trying to push this way, and her left hand, I'm trying to push this way. But we don't assume, right? We got to do them separate, joint by joint. What is the external force trying to do to her right? What is the external force trying to do to her left? Let's stand in front, though. Yeah, we'll do some different views. Okay. And she's holding this position. Make sense for the question? Absolutely. Push, push. Try not to let you go, because that's one of the tricks we did to see the muscles. That's a lot harder than oranges. I think it's probably.
I just feel like nothing is going. So like, yeah.
All right, guys. So let's do right first. It's arbitrary. We could do right or left. Let's do right first. External forces trying to, I like that. Let's eliminate the one we don't want to look at. External forces trying to internally rotate. She needs external rotation force, right? And then we'll say, well, who are those muscles? And I'll teach you infraspinatus, teres minor, posterior fibers of the deltoid muscle. But it's all based off of pull. How do they pull? And this one, I'm trying to externally rotate, right? So she wouldn't need external rotation force. She would need internal rotation force. I'm going to teach you who those muscles are. The anterior fibers of the deltoid, subscapularis, pectoralis major, tissimus dorsi, teres major. So the reverse engineer is do a manual muscle test for the subscapularis. Well, that name doesn't tell you pull. So you say, okay, well, what does it do? Meaning, how does it pull? It's an internal rotation pull. Now that's all you need to know. If I want to test it, I want to supply an external rotation force so that that internal rotation puller would have to turn. Okay. All right. What's next? You tell me.
It's so awkward. Like, don't let, well,
So like we'll go this way.
or like, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Don't let me move your hand out. Don't let me move your hand out. Don't let me move your hand out. I'm pushing this way. Don't let me push you and pull your hand out. Handling Guillory. It's a tough job because I want to give you time, but also want to give you as many questions as possible. What external force was trying to do to Grace's right shoulder? Horizontally so she would need muscles that are pulling in a direction of horizontal I teach you who those muscles are at 450. Make sense? So it's motion. I think you can see why it was so important. It's been the first 2 months because now it's what are external forces trying to do to your motion and then what are internal forces trying to do to your motion. Two different things trying to influence motion. So motion is really, really, really. All right, let's do this one. We don't do scapula enough. So let's say, I go here and gravity and the table is trying to do something to my scapula, but I'm holding this position, if that makes sense. Okay. So if I relaxed all my muscles, this would happen. But I'm holding this position against ground and gravity. That makes sense? So what would the muscles at the scapula be to hold me into this position? When I say this position, let's use layman's terms. My head could be at its lowest point, or my head could be at its highest point. Obviously, it's not motion of my head. I'm just using that as a landmark. So what muscles of the scapula would be used to hold my head at its highest point when the table and gravity are trying to sink my head down? Remember on the test, when I ask about upward and downward rotation, it's going to coincide with shoulder motion. Okay, so when the scapula is moving by itself and there's no shoulder stuff, that's when I'm going to ask you about this stuff or this stuff. What are the forces trying to do to my scapula? It's trying to elevate me. What did you say? No, you're fine.
I said the opposite.
You said depress. That's okay. The reason your brain wanted to go to depression is because most of the time when we do these motions, it's with what we call open chain, right? Or like I have a dumbbell and gravity's trying to depress me. But if gravity is trying to depress, if gravity's trying to bring everything down and then all of a sudden the table stops my arm from going down, would the table be pushing me up into elevation? Does that make sense? So it's like the table is stopping gravity from doing its thing and redirecting the force up, and it's trying to push me into elevation. Does that make sense? So that's one of our illusions, where that's why sometimes, I don't know if you do this too, Grace, but that's why sometimes I have to ask myself like a simulation question, like what would happen if I turned off everything? What motions would happen? So like if I was here and I turned off everything, elevation would happen if I relax all my muscles. So that tells me I need depressors to push against the table. Does that make sense? So that's, does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not your fault. Like we typically do the elevation depression like this. In fact, while we're on the topic, I think another common illusion with that would be like push-ups, right? Where we typically think protraction, retraction, forward and back. But if I'm fixed, retraction is going to be like when my body goes forward. Protraction is going to be when my body goes back. It's the tables pushing on me. Okay. All right, Grace. Two, you could do two if you want, just this one kind of.
This is the force. Like I'm pushing down on his first.
What was Grace trying to do to my left wrist? Flex. So if I'd used flexion pullers, I would literally, you'd have two forces pulling on the rope. The rope would fly across. So if Grace is trying to flex my wrist, that means she's trying to take the rope one way. I need to recruit muscles that are pulling the rope the other way if I'm going to keep the flag in the middle of the tug of war. So I need extensors. Now, tricky is just a function of understanding. But what if I'd have had one wrist or one hand like prone and the other one supine with my radial ulnar joints, and Grace would have provided the same forces? So it goes to show you, like, just because she's providing the same forces doesn't mean It's the same muscles, right? Because she's trying to flex my leg, but she's trying to extend my right. So we can't just assume. We have to take it joint by joint, agonist by agonist, piece by piece. No different than when we did the batting one for exam 2 and the left radioulnar joint supinated and the right pronated, even though it was the same swing, we just can't assume. Any questions on that one? All right, next one. I know you guys don't like this, but I think it works. Partner up, stand up and partner up. And if you need a partner, Grace will break the tie. Everybody needs a partner. Everybody needs somebody. Figure out how it is. Okay, guys, let's do a little reverse engineering. Is there a nod? Does anybody need a partner? Perfect. Just like we drew it up in the playbook. How does it work? If I asked you to do a manual muscle test on the KNES muscle, what in the world is that? It's an elbow extension puller. It's an elbow extensor. So I'm telling you, it pulls in the direction of elbow extension. And I'm asking you with your partner to provide an external force of which would recruit extensors. Does that make sense? How would you want to push on their elbow if you're trying to recruit extensors? Manual muscle test, isometric, but now you are the models and your partner is going to provide an external force. And what I'm hoping is that you'll feel it because your body knows the answer. And I'm hoping this will really sink in the concepts, okay? We'll float around to help. Work the extensors. Turn on the extensors. Recruit the extensors.
Make sure you go back and forth.
All right, we're good? All right, next one with your partner. If you were going to provide that force, right, you would want to try to flex your elbow. So even though you don't have a partner when you're studying, you can still do these manual resistance. I'm trying to test an Anconi. What in the world is that? I'll look it up. Your book or something online may say elbow extension. And that's what I'm trying to teach my students. Don't fall for that. It can do extension when it's working concentrically, but you're actually going to see flexion when it's working eccentric, and you're not going to see any motion when it's working isometrically. 2 out of 3 times, it won't have the motion you may see in a textbook online. Does that make sense? So what I'm trying to teach you is, well, what does it do all the time? Pulls. It pulls that way all the time. Okay. All right. Let's do another one while we're here. Let's do, and listen, if you don't feel comfortable doing with your partner, that's fine. You can provide your own manual muscle resistance, but I just think it just works better. Let's test the manual muscle test for your left lateral cervical benders. Left lateral cervical benders. What would it look like to test those muscles isometrically? Left lateral cervical benders. What would that look like? What I'm saying is you can feel them turn on. That's what I'm hoping. Well, you can feel those muscles turn on to validate what you know. Okay, guys. What did I say? Forget it. Level out. That's like when I'm calling an auction, like 2.5, 5, 7.5, now 1,000, 12.5, 15, 17.5. You're never going to see another one of these again. And I'm like, what number was that? Sounds like you're at one. Forget it. So if we're trying to test left lateral pullers, is that what I said? We want to test left lateral. We need to supply a force that's trying to right laterally bend me. And you should feel it. You should literally feel the muscles of the left side turn on, doing a job, right? Saying, hey, something's trying to take me there and I don't want to go there. What are my options? Or your option's not something on the right to push you back to the left. That's not how muscles work. Your only option is something that's pulling you to the left. All right, how about this one? No manual muscle test. Let's use gravity. Let's use gravity. How would you test? And you can sit on your desk or on your chair, but how do we test the knee extensors with gravity, isometrically, knee extensors? See if we could put ourselves in a position where we could test our knee extensors using gravity alone as an external force. And again, you could sit on your table, you could sit on your chair, but let's see if we could figure out a way. So if I want to test the extensors, I need gravity to try to do what to my knee? See if we could figure out a way to have gravity try to flex our knee. Not hard. Not hard. We just need to build our confidence. There you go. After you do the isometric, now show me what it would look like to have specifically concentric contraction of the knee extensors. What would that look like? Concentric contraction, which phase, or what would it look like to have concentric contraction of your knee extensors? Show me what that would look like.
Yeah.
So that's nice. Fact, there's sometimes where the ink does matter. Um, when there's certain like multiple muscles involved, or for certain pain tolerances, like for sometimes you may be testing for like this stuff, and at certain pain, it manifests more pain. Like manual muscle testing always just for the muscle integrity. Sometimes it's yeah, it's very. Another example too is when people have sinus issues, they may be strong as a bull, fully extended, but as soon as you flex, as soon as you give that quad tendon an angle, all of a sudden the pain is, and their manual muscle test, they'll be weak, but it's not that their muscles are weak, it's that pain is, you to be like, oh, yeah, 100%. When you have pain, especially for kids who've never been hurt before, their muscles will just shut off. Yeah. So you can kind of use their weakness, not as literal weakness, but as a perception. There's this really cool experiment. You do like a perfectly okay shoulder manual muscle test, and if somebody like say has a bruise on their right side, like don't let me push you down, they'll press on the bruise here, because your body's like full. Your focus is on pain. Like, I don't care about this. It's like a distraction. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, guys. So, what you need to have is an external force trying to flex you, which I think everybody had. So therefore, your extensors would be working isometrically. But if I did flexion from here, that would be the eccentric phase. So I would need to specifically do the extension phase to have the concentric work of the extensors making the extension happen. So again, that's why we bring it back to motion, because it's like translating things so that we can have meaning from it. I know it does get confusing, extensors, extension, but actually it becomes easier. Once you get it, you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I need these pullers, so when I see this motion, it's gotta be concentric work. I have these pullers, and when those pullers allow motion the other way, it's gotta be this other type of work. Okay? And we'll get to what those muscles are called. But vastus medialis, lateralis, intermedius, rectus femoris, none of that has pull in the name. So all we'd have to do is say, how would we do a manual muscle test for your vastus medialis? How does it pull? Oh, it's a knee extensor. Oh, cool. So I would just have to have something try to flex so that I could recruit at the extension pull. There may be some times in therapy or rehab where you have to specifically do isometrics at a certain phase of a rehab. There may be times where you just do concentrics. There may be phases where you just do an eccentric. You need to be able to know how to set that up. Okay. All right. Let's do a couple more. Let's do a shoulder one. Okay. Partner. Oh yeah. Let's do with your partner. So hands out. Don't let me push you in. Do that one with your partner. Hands out, don't let me push your hands in. And I want you, the purpose of this lab is to feel what we're hoping your brain is communicating so that it can really soak in, to see who you need because you see why you need it.
You try to push it.
Yeah, trying to push her in. Yep. All right, try this. If you're not seeing it, Trace, I know you're going up there 1 second. If you're not seeing it, do this. Don't let me push you in. Don't let me push you in. Don't let me push you in. And then let go. And you'll literally see the direction of pull of your muscles. Good. Yeah. I want to see a lot of hundreds on this next test. Think about the first time we started talking about muscles, and I gave you the analogy about riding a bike, and there were people that were like, I ain't getting on this bike. And now y'all are like popping wheelies, you're like jumping canyons.
No.
All right. What was the external force trying to do to your shoulders? Horizontally adduct. So you need muscles that are pulling how? Horizontal abduction pullers. I'm going to teach you who those muscles are. Or you may say, oh, I need to test this specific muscle. How does it pull? Oh, it's a horizontal abductor. So I need to produce a force that's trying. It's that easy. With practice, just like anything else. All right, stand up. If you're willing and able, let's go up on our toes. Talk to me about going up on your toes. I'd like agonistic group and contraction. So in other words, you're flat-footed, and then you go up on your toes. Who did it? How? Stay up on your toes. Who's keeping me up on my toes? Isometric. And then finally lowering yourself down. So let's do all the different types of questions of going up on your toes, okay? Agonist, contraction. Go. Think of your shirts.
Yeah, I think it works.
And what's up that they eyes? Has been it's really sit there, push. Oh, wait.
Yeah, are you by law?
It was spreading. Get the straight leg hurts. That's what will be next. Yeah, I actually have probably feel more comfortable getting on the floor.
It's hard. It's hard.
All right, guys. So just as a reminder, mm, no textbook, no textbook in the world has this exact equation. 425,465 minus 3 plus 2 plus 5. No book has that specific question. But does it matter? You know how to add and subtract, so you know how to figure it out. That's all we're doing here. It's going to be impossible to give you every possible question, but if you know how to add and subtract, you can figure it out. Okay? So that's what we're doing here. We're practicing learning our tools. Nothing's trying to make me go up on my toes, so I got to make that happen, right? So if there's no external force, start with motion. Plantar flexion, right? I had plantar flexion. I'm going to put down as my given. What's grounding gravity trying to do to my ankles once I have that plantar flexion? It's trying to bring me back down. It's trying to dorsiflex me. Does that make sense? So if gravity in the ground's trying to dorsiflex me, then I need my plantar flexors. My plantar flexors did the plantar flexion through constant. I'm telling you, you popping wings. Plantar flexors brought me up concentrically. Plantar flexors are going to hold me on my toes isometrically. And then the same muscles that brought you up, the same muscles that held you up, those same exact muscles are going to let you back down. Eccentrically, the plantar flexors are going to let you dorsiflex through eccentric. Does that make sense? All right, next one. You don't have to, if you want to recreate this, you can. I'm just trying to give you something throughout every joint in the body. So self-examine, evaluate. I start here. I bring my leg up. I hold it up. And I let my leg go back down. If I use muscles in the same direction as gravity, I can slam my foot into the ground, okay? All right, do assess that. If you don't want to lay down, I get it, but you could still do a manual muscle test on yourself or with your partner. Just remember the motion that gravity is trying to cause, and therefore the motions my muscles are trying to. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, let's do that. Do like the. Is that something we can do? All right, guys, quick clue. What is gravity trying to do to my right hip? Abduct. Abduct. Okay. So therefore, I would need my adductors concentrically for the adduction, isometrically to prevent gravity from abducting me, and then eccentrically to let the abduction happen at the speed you want it to happen at, not the speed gravity is trying to. All right, this one you could do with your partner. Let's go, Grace. Sit down or stand up, and Grace is going to supply a force to my right. So she's pulling my hands to my right. Let's have a chunk conversation. Agonist at the trunk. I'm using muscles to hold this position because Grace is trying to twist me a certain way. Okay? So she's pulling to my right. How would she be trying to twist my trunk? And therefore, what muscles am I using? After we get that, I'll give some motion so that we can do some contraction practice. Okay? So if you were doing it with your partner, you would be here, and Grace would be trying to push your hands to your right. The hands are connected to your shoulders. Shoulders are connected to your trunk. Therefore, she's trying to twist your trunk.
Yeah, you're trying to reverse. Probably not trying to power. Each and so by the it's a lot of soldier.
It's external force. What was Grace trying to do to my trunk? Trying to twist my trunk to my right transversely. I don't need muscles that pull in the same direction as her. I wouldn't be able to keep myself fixed, right? If I use muscles that pull that way, I might accidentally topple Grace over. She's trying to twist me to the right. I need muscles that are trying to twist my trunk to the left. We call those left transverse trunk rotators. I'm going to teach you who those are. Right external oblique, left internal oblique, left erector spine. But we have to see them first before we say how they pull. Okay. All right. Let's give some motion real quick for contraction. So same exact question. Grace is trying to supply that force, and you observe this motion. Pull, 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 pull. You should be able to tell me the type of contraction, the agonist and the contraction that was responsible for that motion. And the easiest way to do it is match up. Who's pulling? Because I see why they're pulling. And what motion did I have? And if those things sound similar, it's concentric. And if those things sound not similar, it's eccentric. That's it. I like to whisper too.
She's like, still quiet.
Elf. I like to whisper too.
This is, we don't praise you, it's just not. Like for once,
All right, guys, I got one more I want to get to. Concentric or eccentric? Eccentric, good. My left transverse pullers are letting me rotate to the right through eccentric. That's it. All right, last one. You have to get in a chair that has no bar to your left. So if you have no bar to your left, not that you can't do it, it's just you can't move to your right, but left is to your right. So get into a chair where there's no bar to your left. Here, I want you to make your chair swivel to the left. Make your chair swivel to the left. You have to make that happen. I want you to, question of the day, what muscles of your trunk had to swivel your chair to the left? Keep your upper extremity fixed. Keep your shoulders fixed. Swivel your chair. Your sternum stays looking straight. And I want you to practice telling me which muscles of your trunk made your chair swivel to the left. That's your last question of the day. I'm going to give you all the rest of the time in class for.
Well, So it was famous. It's this is really the yeah, this is this is just so it's different. So crazy. I just don't know.
All right, is there any force trying to make your pelvis and trunk rotate? Nothing's trying to make you. So if there's no external force and you're like, oh, that throws me off, no problem. Start with motion. Start with motion. You created left transverse pelvic, but what happened to your trunk? Right transverse trunk. And you had to make that right transverse trunk happen, right? There's no external force trying to, and muscles can only pull, so it had to be done through concentrics. If there's no external force, then concentric's going to speed you up, and eccentric's going to slow you down. If there's no external force trying to make my elbow move, I'm going to use flexors to flex it and extensors to extend it. So I used concentric contraction of my right transverse trunk rotators to make my pelvis spin to the left, but in doing so, it made my trunk spin to the right. Cap and bottom. I think your opinion is yours. I think this is the toughest one because the pelvic girdle and the trunk have to be in opposition. And we have to bring the muscles back to the trunk because the pelvis can move because of hip muscles, and those are whole different muscles than the trunk. So when we're moving the pelvis about the hips, we're going to say hip muscles. What spun the basketball? My hands. This one, what spun the basketball? My trunk. Trunk motion, trunk muscles. Hip motion, hip muscles. Does that make sense? Was today helpful? What I was hoping to do is you can do these on yourself or a wall. I mean, heck, you can do manual resistance against an external force, wall, floor. You can do these to practice. And maybe if you feel it happening, it'll help for you to be able to communicate what's happening. Okay, I'll go. Thank you, Greg. 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate?